The world stands at a precipice in 2025, and ancient words written over 14 centuries ago are echoing through our reality with terrifying precision. What was revealed in the deserts of Arabia is manifesting before our eyes, and those who understand these signs are preparing for what comes next. The question isn't whether these prophecies are real. The question is whether you're ready to see what's already unfolding around you. If you're watching this, you're searching for answers that most people aren't ready to hear. Before we go deeper into these revelations, I need you to do something. Subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell, because the information we're about to share won't stay available forever. Also, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching this video from. I want to see how far this message is reaching across the globe. Now, let's dive into what the Quran predicted about this very moment in history. The Quran isn't just a religious text. It's a book that has described phenomena, events, and transformations that scholars and scientists are only now beginning to fully comprehend. When we examine the verses with the lens of 2025, patterns emerge that are impossible to ignore. These aren't vague predictions that can be twisted to fit any narrative. These are specific, detailed descriptions of conditions, technologies, and social transformations that match our current reality with stunning accuracy. Let's start with one of the most striking prophecies: the transformation of communication and knowledge. The Quran speaks about a time when knowledge will spread across the earth with unprecedented speed, when people will be able to communicate instantly across vast distances, and when information will become so abundant that distinguishing truth from falsehood will become one of humanity's greatest challenges. In Surah Al-Jumu'ah, there's a reference to knowledge being scattered and spread, and in various hadith, there are descriptions of a time when a person could speak and be heard by people in distant lands instantly. Look around you in 2025. We live in the age of the internet, social media, artificial intelligence, and instant global communication. Information travels at the speed of light, and yet we're drowning in misinformation, confusion, and the inability to separate authentic knowledge from fabrication. This isn't coincidence. This is exactly what was foretold. But the prophecies go much deeper than technology. The Quran and the sayings of Prophet Muhammad describe specific social conditions that would manifest in the end times, conditions that mirror 2025 with unsettling precision. There are descriptions of a time when trust will erode, when people will feel isolated despite being connected, when mental anguish will become widespread, and when the pursuit of material wealth will consume humanity to the point of spiritual emptiness. Does this sound familiar? In 2025, we have more ways to connect than ever before, yet loneliness and depression have reached epidemic levels. We have more wealth and resources than any previous generation, yet anxiety, suicide rates, and feelings of meaninglessness continue to climb. The prophecy warned that people would have full stomachs but empty hearts, and that's precisely the crisis we face today. One of the most specific prophecies involves the transformation of the Arabian Peninsula. The Prophet Muhammad stated that the lands of Arabia would one day return to green meadows and rivers, just as they were in ancient times. For centuries, this seemed impossible. Arabia is known for its harsh deserts, extreme heat, and barren landscapes. But in 2025, something remarkable is happening. Climate data shows increasing rainfall in the recent Arabian Peninsula. Ambitious greening projects are transforming vast stretches of desert, and satellite imagery reveals vegetation returning to areas that have been barren for millennia. Scientists are now discussing the cyclical nature of the Sahara and Arabian deserts, confirming that these regions do indeed go through green phases, exactly as was prophesied 1,400 years ago. This isn't symbolic. This is literal transformation happening before our eyes. The Quran also speaks extensively about the signs in the skies and the earth, natural phenomena that would intensify as humanity approaches a critical juncture. There are references to the sky producing visible smoke, to the earth revealing its burdens, to increased seismic activity, and to celestial events that would cause people to reflect on their place in the universe. In 2025, we're witnessing unprecedented atmospheric phenomena, strange cloud formations, increased meteor activity, unusual auroras appearing in regions where they've never been seen before, and a dramatic increase in both the frequency and intensity of earthquakes worldwide. Scientists are documenting these changes, but they're struggling to explain the acceleration. The Quran didn't just predict these events, it explained their purpose as reminders, as wake-up calls, as signs for those who are paying attention. Another chilling prophecy involves the rise of great structures and the competition in building height. There's a famous hadith where the Prophet describes one of the signs of the end times as barefoot, destitute shepherds competing in constructing tall buildings. For generations, scholars wondered what this could mean, but in 2025, the answer is obvious. The Arabian Peninsula, once home to nomadic tribes and humble dwellings, now hosts some of the tallest structures on Earth. Cities like Dubai, Riyadh, and Jeddah compete to build the next record-breaking skyscraper, and this competition has spread globally. The descendants of those who once lived in tents now preside over architectural marvels that pierce the clouds. This prophecy wasn't about technology, it was about transformation, pride, and the rapid shift in the balance of global power and wealth. Every new tower that rises is a fulfillment of words spoken in the 7th century. The Quran also addresses moral and ethical decline in specific ways that resonate deeply with 2025. There are descriptions of a time when shame would disappear, when immorality would be practiced openly without guilt, when family structures would break down, and when the boundaries between right and wrong would become blurred in the name of freedom and progress. The text doesn't condemn progress. It warns about the loss of moral anchors that guide how we use that progress. In 2025, we see this manifesting globally. The normalization of behaviors that were once considered harmful, the breakdown of traditional family units, skyrocketing rates of children growing up without stable parental structures, and a culture that increasingly rejects the concept of absolute moral truths. This isn't about being judgmental. It's about recognizing that these patterns were specifically predicted as indicators of a society moving towards spiritual crisis. One of the most fascinating aspects of Quranic prophecy is its description of knowledge itself becoming superficial. There are references to a time when people would have access to vast amounts of information but would lack wisdom and deep understanding. Knowledge would be abundant, but comprehension would be shallow. In 2025, we're living in the information age, yet critical thinking is declining. People can access millions of articles, videos, and data points with a simple search, yet the ability to synthesize, analyze, and derive meaningful wisdom from this information is becoming rare. We scroll through endless content, absorbing fragments without depth, forming opinions without investigation, and confusing information consumption with actual learning. The prophecy warned of this exact condition: abundant knowledge without the light of understanding. The Quran speaks about the appearance of widespread tribulation and chaos, what is referred to as fitna. This isn't just war or conflict, it's confusion, moral chaos, and situations where right and wrong become indistinguishable to the masses. The descriptions indicate that during these times, people will wake up as believers and go to sleep as disbelievers, or vice versa, because the pressures and confusions will be so intense. Look at 2025. We're living in an era of constant ideological warfare, where narratives shift rapidly, where yesterday's truth becomes today's misinformation, where people are cancelled and rehabilitated within news cycles, and where standing firm on any principle makes you a target from multiple directions. The ability to maintain spiritual and moral clarity in such an environment is exactly the challenge that was foretold. There are also specific prophecies about economic systems and the nature of wealth in the end times. The Quran and Hadith describe a period when usury, riba, or interest-based transactions would become so pervasive that avoiding it would be nearly impossible, and that this system would create massive wealth inequality and economic instability. In 2025, the global economy is built almost entirely on interest-based debt. Governments, corporations, and individuals are buried under layers of interest-bearing obligations. The wealth gap has never been wider, with a tiny percentage of humanity controlling the vast majority of resources while billions struggle. Economic crashes, inflation crises, and financial instability have become regular features of our world. This isn't a flaw in the system according to Islamic prophecy. This is the inevitable result of building an economy on foundations that were explicitly forbidden. Another startling prophecy involves the role of women in society and the specific transformations that would occur. The prophecies describe a time when women would be dressed yet naked, meaning they would wear clothing but in ways that don't provide actual modesty or coverage. The prophecies describe a time when women would be dressed yet naked, meaning they would wear clothing but in ways that don't provide actual modesty or coverage. There are also descriptions of women significantly outnumbering men and of family roles being inverted in ways that would create social confusion. In 2025, fashion trends have indeed moved toward revealing clothing being normalized everywhere from runways to streets to professional settings. The global gender ratio is shifting due to various factors including war, disease, and demographic changes, and family structures have transformed dramatically, with traditional roles being redefined or rejected entirely. These prophecies aren't about restricting women, they're about describing observable social transformations that would characterize a specific era in human history. The Quran also contains prophecies about the Jews returning to the Holy Land and the conflicts that would emerge there. For centuries after the diaspora, this seemed impossible. The Jewish people were scattered across the globe with no homeland. Yet the Quran stated that they would be gathered again before the end times. In 1948, Israel was established, and in 2025, the conflicts in that region continue to be among the most significant and intractable in the world. The prophecies describe these conflicts as signs of approaching culmination, not just political disputes, but spiritual battles with cosmic significance. Whether you view these conflicts through a religious, political, or humanitarian lens, their centrality to global affairs and their resistance to resolution align precisely with what was foretold. There are prophecies about the appearance of false messiahs and deceivers, individuals who would claim spiritual authority and lead masses of people astray through charisma, apparent miracles, and appealing messages that deviate from truth. In 2025, we're witnessing the rise of countless spiritual influences, cult-like movements, and charismatic figures who blend spirituality with self-help, technology with mysticism, and ancient wisdom with modern distortions. Social media has enabled anyone to position themselves as a guru, prophet, or enlightened teacher, gathering millions of followers who accept their teachings without critical examination. The prophecy warned that deception would become sophisticated, appealing, and widespread, making discernment one of the most crucial skills for survival in these times. The Quran describes a time when time itself would seem to accelerate, when years would pass like months, months like weeks, and days like hours. This isn't literal time compression, but rather the human experience of time speeding up. Ask anyone in 2025 how they experience time, and the most common response is that it's flying by, that years blur together, that there's never enough time despite all our time-saving technology. Psychologists are studying this phenomenon, the subjective acceleration of time perception in modern life. What they're discovering aligns with what was described centuries ago, that as humanity approaches a critical threshold, the experience of time would fundamentally shift, creating a sense of urgency and compression that would characterize the era. One of the most powerful prophecies involves the spread of Islam itself. The Quran states that its message would reach every household on earth, whether people accepted or rejected it. For most of history, this seemed unlikely. Islam was regional, contained, limited by geography and communication barriers. But in 2025, Islam is the fastest-growing religion on the planet. It's present in every country, discussed in every media outlet, and impossible to ignore, regardless of where you live. Through migration, conversion, birth rates, and global communication, Islamic teachings are indeed reaching every corner of the earth. This isn't about superiority, it's about the fulfillment of a specific prediction about the spread and recognition of this message, whether it's accepted with faith or rejected with hostility. The prophecies also describe a great battle or series of conflicts that would involve multiple nations and would center around specific geographical areas. References to Syria, Iraq, and the broader Middle East appear repeatedly in end times prophecies. In 2025, these regions remain flashpoints of global conflict. Proxy wars, great power competition, sectarian violence, and struggles over resources and influence continue to devastate these areas and draw in nations from across the world. The prophecies describe these conflicts as necessary precursors to major transformations, painful birth pangs of a new era. The suffering in these regions isn't random. According to Islamic eschatology, it's part of a larger pattern that has purpose and direction. There are prophecies about the appearance of the Mahdi, a figure who would appear during times of great chaos and injustice to restore balance and guide humanity back toward truth. While many false claimants have appeared throughout history, the prophecies provide specific signs about the conditions that would exist when the true figure emerges. In 2025, the conditions described, global chaos, moral confusion, widespread oppression, and humanity on the brink, are more present than they've been in generations. This doesn't mean the Mahdi is here now, but it does mean we're living in the type of conditions that the prophecies associated with his eventual appearance. For believers, this creates both urgency and hope. Urgency to prepare spiritually, and hope that relief and guidance will come when the chaos reaches its peak. The Quran also speaks about the barrier of Gog and Magog, forces of corruption and chaos that would eventually break through and spread across the earth, causing massive disruption before their eventual destruction. Scholars have interpreted this in various ways. Some see it as literal tribes or nations, others as symbolic representations of destructive forces. In 2025, we can observe forces of chaos, exploitation, and destruction that spread across borders. Whether it's environmental devastation, economic predation, or the breakdown of social cohesion, the prophecy describes these forces as being initially contained, but eventually overwhelming barriers and spreading rapidly. Whatever the specific interpretation, the pattern of containment followed by sudden, overwhelming spread characterizes many of the crises we face today. One particularly relevant prophecy involves the sun rising from the west, an event described as one of the major signs before the end of times. While some interpret this literally as an astronomical phenomenon, Others see it as symbolic of a great reversal. When the source of guidance and light for humanity shifts direction, when what was once the periphery becomes the center, and when established orders are completely overturned. In 2025, we're witnessing unprecedented shifts in global power, with the decline of Western dominance and the rise of Eastern powers, with traditional sources of authority being questioned and rejected, and with complete inversions of long-established norms. Whether literal or symbolic, this prophecy captures the sense of fundamental reversal and disorientation that characterizes our current moment. The prophecies also speak extensively about the importance of holding on to faith during times of intense pressure, comparing it to holding burning coals in your hand. This isn't about physical persecution necessarily, but about the intense social, psychological, and environmental pressure that would make maintaining spiritual commitment extremely difficult. In 2025, people who try to maintain traditional religious commitments face mockery, professional consequences, social isolation, and constant pressure to compromise or abandon their beliefs in the name of progress or tolerance. The prophecy wasn't exaggerating. For many believers today, especially younger generations, maintaining faith in environments hostile to religious devotion truly does feel like holding fire. There are predictions about the proliferation of killing and violence, described as the Al-Hajj, a period when killing would become so common that those doing the killing wouldn't know why they're killing, and those being killed wouldn't know why they're being killed. This describes senseless violence, mass shootings, terrorist attacks where victims are random, and conflicts where the original purpose has been lost in cycles of revenge and chaos. In 2025, this prophecy manifests in school shootings, terrorist attacks in crowded spaces, drone strikes that kill civilians, and conflicts where all sides have lost sight of their initial goals but continue fighting out of momentum and hatred. The specific character of this violence, its senselessness, its randomness, its disconnection from rational purpose, matches the prophetic description precisely. The Quran also contains descriptions of humans becoming arrogant in their knowledge and capabilities, believing they have mastered the natural world and no longer need divine guidance. This isn't about being anti-science, it's about the spiritual danger of hubris, of believing that human knowledge is complete and sufficient. In 2025, we see this attitude prevalent in many circles. The belief that science and technology will solve all problems, that human reason is supreme, and that ancient wisdom and spiritual guidance are outdated superstitions. The prophecy warned that this attitude would lead to disasters when humans, intoxicated with their own capabilities, would make decisions without wisdom, creating technologies without ethics, and pursuing power without responsibility. Our current crises with AI, genetic engineering, environmental destruction, and nuclear weapons show exactly what happens when knowledge advances faster than wisdom. There are prophecies about true scholars and knowledgeable people becoming rare, while ignorant people would become numerous and would speak with authority on matters they don't understand. In 2025, we're witnessing the death of expertise. Anyone with a social media account can position themselves as an authority. Traditional credentials are dismissed, and complex subjects are reduced to viral sound bites by people with no deep understanding. Meanwhile, actual scholars who have spent decades studying their fields are ignored or cancelled if their conclusions don't align with popular narratives. The prophecy described this exact inversion: ignorance pretending to be knowledge, and real knowledge being silenced or marginalized. The Quran speaks about a time when people would be tested through their children, when children would become sources of trial and difficulty rather than sources of blessing and joy. In 2025, parents everywhere are experiencing this. Children addicted to screens, suffering from mental health crises, being exposed to harmful ideologies and content, and the parent-child relationship becoming a battleground instead of a sanctuary. The prophecy wasn't about children being inherently problematic. It was about the conditions of an era making the raising of righteous, healthy children extremely challenging, turning one of life's greatest blessings into one of its greatest trials. Another prophecy describes market transactions becoming so sophisticated and widespread that avoiding questionable earnings would become nearly impossible, and that wealth would flow toward those already wealthy, while the poor would become poorer. The description matches our current global economic system perfectly. Complex financial instruments, hidden fees, exploitative contracts, and systems designed to extract wealth from the bottom and concentrate it at the top. In 2025, trying to earn money without participating in interest, exploitation, or questionable practices has become extraordinarily difficult, exactly as was foretold. The prophecies also mention that rain would fall, but the earth would not produce crops, a puzzling statement for centuries, but one that makes sense in 2025. We're seeing increasing rainfall in many areas, yet agricultural productivity is being threatened by soil degradation, loss of nutrients, contamination, and the failure of seeds to produce healthy yields despite adequate water. The prophecy was describing environmental destruction that would make the earth unable to fulfill its function of producing sustenance, even when the basic conditions like rainfall are present. There are descriptions of people living in luxury while being spiritually dead, having all material needs met, but feeling empty and purposeless. This is perhaps one of the most accurate prophecies for 2025. Rates of depression, anxiety, and suicide are highest in the world's most affluent nations. People in developed countries have unprecedented comfort, safety, and material wealth, yet report feeling unfulfilled, anxious, and disconnected. The prophecy understood what modern psychology is only now confirming, that material comfort alone cannot satisfy the human soul, and that a life without spiritual purpose is a life of quiet desperation, regardless of external circumstances. The Quran also prophesied about the breaking of family ties and the weakening of kinship bonds, that people would maintain relationships with strangers while severing ties with their own relatives. In 2025, this is painfully common. People have thousands of online friends but don't speak to their siblings, maintain elaborate professional networks but neglect aging parents, and invest energy in virtual communities while allowing family relationships to deteriorate. The prophecy identified this as both a sign of the times and a cause of spiritual and social decay. Family bonds are meant to be the foundation of healthy societies, and their weakening creates cascading problems. One of the most sobering prophecies involves the worship of wealth, that people would make their desires and their money into gods, following them as devotedly as religious people follow their faith. In 2025, this isn't metaphorical. The pursuit of wealth, fame, and pleasure has become the de facto religion of much of humanity. People sacrifice their health, relationships, and integrity on the altar of career and financial success. The language of money and desire has become sacred. We speak of market forces with reverence, treat billionaires as prophets, and structure our entire lives around economic considerations. The prophecy warned that this would lead to spiritual emptiness and social corruption. And looking at 2025, it's clear that prediction was accurate. So what does all this mean for us living in 2025? These prophecies aren't about inducing fear or resignation. They're about awareness and preparation. The Quran presents these signs not as predetermined doom, but as warnings and wake-up calls. They're meant to shake people out of complacency, to make us recognize the gravity of our times, and to motivate us toward meaningful change while there's still time. For believers, This recognition should lead to strengthening faith, purifying intention, and working actively toward positive change rather than passive acceptance. For seekers and those uncertain, these prophecies offer a framework for understanding the chaos of our times, providing context and meaning rather than leaving us drowning in random crises and inexplicable transformations. The fulfillment of these prophecies in 2025 demonstrates something profound, that the Quran isn't just ancient literature, but a living text containing knowledge that transcends time and human understanding. The accuracy and specificity of these predictions should cause any rational person to pause and consider the source of this knowledge. These aren't vague fortune-telling statements that could apply to any era. They're detailed descriptions of specific conditions, technologies, social transformations, and global situations that are manifesting with remarkable precision in our current moment. This either represents an extraordinary coincidence, or it represents something far more significant, that the Quran contains knowledge from beyond the limitations of 7th century human understanding. As we move forward through 2025 and beyond, these prophecies will continue to unfold. Some events described haven't occurred yet. There are major signs still awaiting fulfillment, transformations yet to come, and trials that will surpass even what we're experiencing now. But for those paying attention, the pattern is undeniable. We're living in the era that was described, warned about, and prepared for in the Quranic text. This isn't about the end of the world in a simplistic sense. It's about the end of an era, the birth of a new phase in human existence, and the ultimate accountability that every soul will face for how they navigated these extraordinary times. The most important question isn't whether these prophecies are being fulfilled. If you've watched this far, you've seen the evidence with your own eyes. The real question is what you're going to do with this knowledge. Will you dismiss it and continue living as though these times are normal? Will you recognize the signs but allow fear or apathy to paralyze you? Or will you use this awareness as motivation to align yourself with truth, to strengthen your connection with your Creator, to purify your life from the corruptions that characterize this era, and to prepare yourself spiritually for what's coming? These prophecies were preserved and transmitted across 14 centuries for a reason. They're meant to guide those living in these times toward wisdom, faith, and meaningful action. The clock isn't just ticking, it's racing. Everything the Quran predicted is happening now in 2025 with a clarity that should shake us to our core. This isn't about inducing panic, it's about inducing awakening. The signs are here, the patterns are clear, and the question is whether we have the courage to see what's in front of us and respond with wisdom rather than denial. If these words have resonated with you, share this message with others who need to hear it. Like and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next, because we're going to continue exploring these prophecies and what they mean for your life right now. The future isn't just approaching, it's already here, and those who understand the signs will navigate it with purpose, clarity, and faith, while others stumble in confusion and fear. The choice is yours, but choose quickly. 2025 is proving that time is shorter than we think.